So when we left off, we had just installed our dependencies, and what I was going to say is what we're going to want to do next is just kind of create some basic structure for the app. So we've been talking about modularization. We want to do that again.
And the recording is going again because I know we switched places on that, right?
Yes, it is, right? That's a dark square. And now I'm like questioning this every time. All right, so let's create a folder for our server stuff. Okay, and then inside the server folder, what kinds of folders are we going to have? Yeah, that's correct. We want to have a config folder, and then we also want to have controllers and then models, right? All right, so let's do controllers, and then we'll also have our models. Okay, and then before we do anything else, let's just kind of create a basic app so that we can make sure that everything's working. So we'll just go server.js, and then in here we want to get our express going, so require express. Oops. Okay. And then we'll create a new app, so we'll say app equals express, which we're invoking. And then, excuse me, and then what we're going to do is we'll just create a basic route to make sure that everything's running as expected. So if we do an app.get at the index route, we'll just send something back. So we've got a function against a request and a response. And I'm just going to return res.send. Hello. There we go. And then what else do I need to do to get my app going? Listen. Very important. So we'll give it a port number. And whoops, the way that I wrote my function is not exactly kosher. So let's just go like this. All right, I was kind of using a fat arrow syntax, but when you use fat arrow syntax, you actually leave off this function declaration, and we would do it something like this. Okay, have you guys seen that before?
Yeah.
Oh, a little bit here and there. Okay, cool. So we've got a basic app that just simply returns hello. Let's just get it running and make sure that everything's as it should be. So we'll say node mon against our server.js. And it's watching here, so let's go check it. Localhost 3000. Hello. So we're where we want to be. First thing we'll probably do is flesh out the model, because for this assignment we're just dealing with one type of thing. We're just dealing with tasks. That's it. So let's before we get to the model, let's do something inside of our config file, or our folder. We can set up our Mongoose connection. Okay. So we'll just do a Mongoose file. And then in here, what do we want to do? The first thing that we need to bring in is Mongoose itself. Require that. Okay. And then what do we need to do to actually use Mongoose? Connect it, right? Mongoose.connect. And then we'll pass it in this connection string. And then we're going to say whatever the name of the database is. So let's just say Restful tasks. Actually, wait. I think I already have that DB. Let's just say Restful tasks Angular. Like that. And then the second argument is where we can pass in some options for Mongoose. So we want to use that new URL parser so that we don't get that deprecation warning. And then down here, we're getting a little help with autocomplete. So we'll set that to true. Okay. So we're connected to Mongoose. And what's the other thing that we generally want to do inside of our Mongoose file? Any ideas?
We don't create the schema here, right?
No.
The whole chunk.
The what chunk?
Whole chunk.
Whole chunk?
From the visualization.
Yeah, require the FS and all that.
Oh right, yeah. So we can do it that way. I'm gonna kind of take a shortcut because we only have one model. I'm just gonna say let's require that single model that we want, which is gonna be the task model. Okay. So we'll go require, and then where is that? That's gonna be up one level, and then inside of our models, and then we're just gonna call it task. Okay. So we haven't actually required this file yet, so obviously we're not going to break anything. But the next thing that we need to do is actually create our model so that we have something to require here. So let's go in here and we'll just create a task file here. And now what do we need to bring into this as well? We're creating a task model. So what do we need? Mongoose, right? There we go. All right. And how do we go about creating our schema? Anybody remember?
Task schema.
Okay, yeah, so we'll assign it to a variable, say task schema equals new.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I knew it.
All right.
From your last project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the attributes that we want on this schema? So we want a title, right? And the type of that title is going to be string. Very good. And then what else do we want? Description. Okay. Type of that is going to be string as well. Was this required? I think it might have been, right?
Description is, I don't think is required.
It's
but
not
title
required?
is.
Oh, really? Okay, so let's look back at the Restful Tasks API assignment. So, oops.
That's not even the first version.
Oh, it's not? Is it the building an
you're
API
right,
one?
right there.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so we've got title is going to be a string, but it's not necessarily required. Description is going to be a string. It's going to default to empty string. So then I guess that's not really required, right? So we'll say default is going to be just an empty string. Okay, and then I'm going to grab the rest of this too so that we don't have to keep looking back. Just grab these right here. And then I'll just paste them in and comment them out. So we know we're going to want the timestamps. That's no big deal. We don't really have to do any manual work on that. We have this completed, which is a Boolean, just saying whether or not we've completed the task. So let's come in here, completed, type, Boolean, and the default is going to be false. Okay. And then to get these timestamps, we don't have to do anything other than just say we want to use timestamps. True. Okay. So we're good. Now how do we create the model from this schema? Model, okay. So then the name of our model, which we're going to call task. And then we're going to pass in the actual schema that we just created there. Okay, so now that we've got these two things going, we've got our Mongoose file, and then our Mongoose file is requiring our model. We can go ahead and require this in our main server file. So let's go back to server, and up here let's see, we'll just say require, and then the location of this is going to be inside of our config folder, and we're just going to go Mongoose. Uh-oh. Can't find it.
I know you have to put .js at the end.
No, that's not what's happening there. Oh yeah, server, sorry. My bad. Okay, so
Is it still crashing?
yeah, we're still crashing. Oh, Mongo network error. So here's the thing. I haven't actually started my Mongo server or my MongoDB at all. So that's why it's going to have problems connecting. So let's create a couple new windows here. We'll have one where we start up Mongo, Mongod, MongoD. Come back here, and let's just restart this guy, because it looks like our Mongo started up successfully. Yeah. So we're good to go on that, right? If we come back here, no more crash. So we're good to go. So we got our model. The next thing that we really need to do is to actually do something with it. We need to create some controller that will interact with this model, right? So what controller are we going to have, do you think? Tasks, right? Yeah, that's very good. So let's create a tasks controller. And then in my tasks controller, what am I going to have access to in order to? Got to have access to my model, right? That's correct. So how are we going to get that? You're on the right track. So we need Mongoose first before we can even grab the model, right? So we have to actually require it. And then what I can do is Steve? Yeah, so now I can say task equals mongoose.model, and I can just call it out by name. So task was the name of the model that we already registered. And then what kind of thing are we going to export from our controller, from our tasks controller? Yeah, it's going to be a module, and it's going to be what? An object, right? Is that what you said? I think that's what you said, but yeah, that's what we want. We want an object here, and the object is just gonna have the different methods that we want to use in our routes themselves. Okay. So what kinds of things do we want? We probably want to be able to get all of our tasks. Does that make sense? So we'll just call this, I don't know, get all. And then this needs to take in a request and a response. And all we're going to do in here is we're just going to simply find all of our tasks. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, right? So let's go. How are we going to do that? Task dot find. Yeah, just empty object because we want to find everything. And then this is our callback function here. So it's going to take in an error. And then we'll say tasks because it should give us back an array of tasks if everything's going right. So if error, throw new error. Tasks not received. Dun dun dun. All right. However, assuming everything goes right, let's hope that it does, then let's just simply return res.json. So we're going to return a JSON object which has our tasks in it. Okay? Have you guys seen this before? I'm just going to dump it in here. So we'll say res.json equals the tasks. All right? That's all we're doing. We're just simply finding all the tasks that we have and then returning them out. And up in here, since I'm not really doing anything with this request, I'm just going to underscore it because VS Code doesn't really like it when you don't use variables that you've declared. So anyway, that's kind of a way to handle that. So we've got this method to get all of our tasks. Now what do we need to do with that method? What does that need to be hooked into? The routes, right? Which we haven't yet created. So let's come inside config here and create routes. All right, and what are we going to need to use inside of our routes? The thing that we were just working on, right? Which is, say it again?
The controllers.
The task controller, right? Exactly. So let's just say tasks controller, and then we're going to require this controller, which is up one level, and then inside controllers, and then we'll go into tasks. Okay, cool. And then what are we going to export from our routes.js? No, not this time. A function. That's right. Yeah, exactly. We're going to export a function which takes in an app. And then what we can do is we can plug in our routes to the app inside that function. So let's say module.exports equals a function that takes in an application. And then inside there, I'm going to have some different routes. So the first route, the only one that we have working at this time, is just to get all, right? So let's say, we'll say app.get, and then I'm going to do API here because I want to differentiate kind of between the front end and the back end a little bit. So when we go to API and then /tasks, I want to retrieve all of my tasks that I have. Okay? And what did we call that method in our controller? It was just get all. Yeah, exactly. So that's the callback I want to give to it. I want to say tasks controller dot get all. And why am I not invoking this function in here? Can anyone explain that to me? Because it won't actually get invoked until a person hits that route itself. Okay? So we're just passing it a callback, and we're saying when somebody hits this route, this is what I want to have happen. I want you to run this callback function. Okay? So that's all we've got for now. We just have this. We're going to hit our index route, pull all of our tasks, and then the only thing that we need to do in order to get this working is what? Have we required our routes file yet? No, not yet, right? So let's get rid of this. And then in here, what we're going to do is we're going to require our routes, and then we're also going to invoke our routes against this application that we've created here. So we'll go require, and then the routes are inside server config routes. And then we want to invoke that against our application. All right. Now to test this out, rather than doing a bunch of stuff through the browser, I'm just going to open up Postman and see what we can get in there. So let's open up Postman. Have any of you guys installed this yet?
Yeah, that's one thing.
A little bit? Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. So just get rid of that. Don't save. Okay. So I'll just open up a new tab here, and then we're going to do a GET request to localhost 3000. And then I want to go to API and then tasks. So there we go. We've got the get all route seems to be working because we know we don't have any tasks in this database yet. Now the next thing that we probably want to do is actually create some tasks so that when we go and fetch them all, it's not an empty array anymore. So where are we gonna add that functionality? Tasks, right? We want to actually create the method inside of our tasks controller. Let me bring that down a little bit. Okay, so yeah, let's create a create method. Okay, so we're going to take in a request and response here. There's one thing that we should probably do before we start creating tasks, and that's this. We haven't yet given our Express app the ability to retrieve or actually receive JSON data. Okay, and this is going to be important because when we create a task, we're going to send our API some JSON. So how do you think we're going to do that? Any guesses on that one? We got to use body parser, right? So let's say body parser equals require body parser. Okay, and then we need to use it. Now you guys have gotten used to using the URL encoded method, but this time we're going to use the JSON method. So we'll say app.use, and then we're going to say body parser.json. So we want to invoke the JSON method, which means that now our application is going to be able to receive JSON data, and we'll be able to read it. Okay, so let's go back to our task controller. We want to create one. So how are we going to do that? Good, so we'll go task.create. And then we want to give it the document that we're creating, right? So where are we going to get that document? From what? From URL? No, not quite, right? Because we're just going to be taking this at, so let's say our endpoint is going to be API/tasks, and it's going to be a post request. We're not getting anything from the URL, right? Yeah, or in this case, it's not going to be coming directly from a form. We're going to send it in through Postman. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be the JSON, basically the request body that comes through. So when we send it through Postman, we're going to get it on the back end as part. It comes in through our rec.body, right? Remember, we've seen that a little bit. So we're going to create it from rec.body, and that's just the body of the request that came in. And then we always need to give it this function that takes in an error, and then also the document, assuming that it was created. So we'll just call it task. Okay, and then, so inside this, let's kind of handle an error. So if an error comes, what do we want to send back? Let's just send back the error as is, just for now. So we'll say return res.json, and then the error, or we'll say results equals failed, and then error equals error. Okay, so that's what's going to happen if we fail. So if we fail validation for some reason, we should get back an error, and it should tell us that the request failed. Otherwise, let's just return back the newly created task. So we'll say, and we don't really need that return, but we can say res.json results success, and then we'll just give it back the task that we created. All right, are we done yet with this? No, why not? Because we got to add it to the route, correct. We don't yet have this in our routes. We just have the method itself. So that was our app.get. Now we want to have an app.post, which hits essentially that same route, just the method is going to be different. And then what are we going to pass to this? No, good. Dot create. Yeah. Okay. So that's the method that I want to run when I send in a create request. Okay. So everything should be good now. We added the method itself, and then we added it to our routes. Let's try to create a task. Okay, so instead of a get request, let's do a post request. And then the body of my request is just going to be JSON. So in here I can change this to JSON. All right. And really the only three things that we have to provide, or I mean we could even provide two, I guess, because we've got some defaults in here. We need the title, the description, and then the completed. All right, so let's just put all those in there. So title, what are we going to call this? Eat breakfast. Yeah, done. All right, and then our description, we'll say the most important meal, exclamation point. All right, completed. Oops. True. All right, let's try to send this through. Okay, excellent. So we created our first task. We got back the task ID, the underscore ID there, and then we also got our timestamps, which we wanted. So we're in pretty good shape. Let's try to create one that's missing something. So actually, I don't know that anything's going to be a problem here, right? Because we had a default for the description. Nothing's going to fail validation, as it is. Am I right about that, or do we potentially have some way of checking our validation?
Change the title to have like a minimum length.
Yeah, like if we pass a number to the title, I wonder if that would cause a problem. I think probably it would try to coerce it, but maybe if we, I don't know, we'll try it real quick and then we'll move on. So if I come in here and I try to say title is 5. Wow. Yes, it did.
Stringified the num.
Yep. Yeah. So that's okay though. We can obviously delete this task later on. Probably we want to add in a delete route, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back to our tasks controller real quick and just set up a delete. So delete's going to take in, oops, all the same stuff that we've been taking in. We always need to take in the request and the response. Okay, and how do we know which tasks to delete? Well, but I mean, in terms of the request, how do we know which one we're gonna
In this case, you're probably going to do it by title because we don't have as much act. I mean, you could copy and paste the ID, but it's not like we're creating the front end to be able to.
Well, so when we make our API, how are we gonna know if, let's say we want to delete something? Right. So we're gonna create a route param that takes in the actual ID of the task. Exactly. So let's do something like find by ID and delete, and then that should take in. Oh, it's gonna take in a document query. Okay. Actually, no. This is equivalent to just passing in an ID. So we're gonna have some kind of rec.params.id, right? That we're gonna pass in, and then our callback as always, is just going to take in an error, and the document is probably going to be non-existent because we're deleting it, right? So let's just do something if there's an error. So if error, we'll return res.json result failed, and then the error is just the error. Otherwise, we'll just return a success thing. So we'll say res.json result success. Okay, so we're getting in this ID from our rec.params, and what's the other thing that we need to do? So we created the method, but what else do we need to do? We've got to go back to routes and plug that in, right? So let's go in here, and then we're going to say app.delete, because this is going to be a delete request. And then we're going to send it to API tasks, and then we're going to have an ID in there. And then we want to do the same thing with the delete method. Okay. That's what I called it, right? Delete. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a delete route now. Let's try to test that and see if we can delete this this task that we didn't really want. So I'm just going to grab the ID here, and then come up here, and we'll do a delete request, and I'll just plug this in, task ID. So result success, we're pretty good there. Let's go back in and just do a get request to get all of our tasks. Take this off. Oh, I can't seem to remove that. Okay. So we're back where we started. We got one task, right? Maybe we'll create one more task just to make it a little more solid. Okay, so let's do, what else do we want to do today? Learn main. And then description will be a sweet stack. All right, completed false. All right, so we're sending a post request back to tasks. There we go, we got our success, and then once again, we'll just get everything. All right, cool, we're in pretty good shape. We got 2 tasks in here. So the only other thing we really need to do is just have an update, right? Just want to be able to update these tasks as well. So let's go back into our tasks controller. We'll call this the update method. And again, we're going to take in a request and response. So how do we want to do this? Mongoose has some different methods. I think the one that we'll probably use is this find by ID and update. So let's grab that one. Okay. And then inside here, what we want to do is pass it the ID. So again, how are we going to get that? rec.params.id. Very good. And then the second thing we want to do is what the actual update object is. And where are we getting that from? Where's the updated task coming from? Rec.body, right? Okay. Rec.body. And then we also have this optional third argument where we can say, I want to return the new document. Okay? I don't want to get the old document. I want to see what it looks like after I've updated it. And then I can also make sure that my validators run. Now this won't be important here because our validation is obviously not doing anything for us. But for the other assignments you guys are doing, you may have to ensure that this thing is true because for some reason it's not going to run your validators by default. Okay? And then the fourth thing that we're going to pass in is just going to be our callback function. Again, And then the second thing that that's going to take in is the updated task. So we'll just call it task again. And then if there's an error, let's return res.json. We'll say result failed error. Okay. Otherwise, let's just return the updated document. So we'll say result was success, and then the task is going to be the task that we get back there. All right. Look pretty good. What else do we need to do? Put it in the routes every time. All right. So I've got this for my delete. Let's go in here and we'll say app dot. So this is going to be a put request. Okay. And what a put request means is that we're updating something in our data set. All right. So we're going to do a put request against what should our route be on this one? Anybody? The ID, right? We got to get that ID so that we have access to it in the method. Okay. And what is our callback going to be? Update. Good. All right, so we got that. Let's just look at one of these IDs and see if we can send a put request to it. So I've got the eat breakfast one. Let's take that, and then we'll change this to a put request. And then we want to send that to the ID that we're trying to update here. And then let's just change some things about this. So instead of eat breakfast, let's change it to eat lunch. And then we'll say, I don't know, Chipotle. And then we'll say completed true. Actually, it was already completed. We'll change that to false. All right, send that there. Okay, good. So we successfully updated our document. We've got completed is false. The description is now Chipotle. Eat lunch is the title. Does anybody have any questions thus far? No? This is all like standard stuff at this point, right? So the next thing that we're going to want to do for this assignment is we need to actually hook this into an Angular app. So we've got all of our backend running the way that we want it to. And if I go to here, this is where we're talking about plugging it into an Angular app. So hopefully you guys who have already gotten to Angular, you've probably installed the command line interface already. That's called a CLI. And I'll just open up another terminal so that I can actually do this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Angular application. And the way that you do that, once you've installed the command line interface, is you're going to do ng new and then the name of the project that we're creating. So here, I've got a server folder, and I'm going to create a public folder in order to house the Angular app itself. Okay, so let's go ng new, and then we'll just call it public. And then it's going to ask you if you want to include Angular routing. I'm just going to say yes, although we're not going to use it today. Later on, we'll be introduced to Angular routing so that we can route things on the front end of our project too. And then it's going to give you options in how do you want to write your styles. So CSS, SCSS, which is for, these are two different ways of doing Sass, SCSS and SASS. There's also LESS and Stylus. I've never used Stylus before, but we're just going to stick with CSS for now. That's what you guys know and love. Okay, and you'll notice that it's doing a bunch of work for us behind the scenes. So eventually when this thing gets built, we're going to see a lot of stuff that that would have been a pain in the butt for us to build. And ng, the Angular command line interface, is doing tons of work for us. And you can see here all these files that have already been created. So we've got an angular.json, a package.json. So notice inside here in our public folder, we have this other package.json. So this is specific to the Angular app itself. It's not the one that we're going to use for the entire project. It's just specific to the front end part of the project. Okay. So cool. We finished up here. It's successfully initialized Git for us. So you can see inside here we actually have a git ignore file, which is kind of nice. And then what I'm going to do in order to actually get this thing running is I need to run this command ng build. And I'm also going to add a flag to it. This flag is called watch. It means that the app is going to be rebuilt every time I make changes to it. So it's in essence like what we've been working with NodeMon on some level, only for the front end. So let's go into our public folder, because that's where the Angular app is, and then I want to build it. And I want to add this watch flag so that anytime I make a change to it, it is reflected right away. Okay, so it's building all this stuff for us. Wow, a lot of things, right? Okay, now that it's built, we should notice inside here we've got this dist folder. Okay, and that's actually where all of the built files are going to go. So when we render the app, or when we want it to appear on the website, we want to actually reference the files that are in here, inside the dist folder and then inside the public folder. Okay, so how do you guys think that we're going to get to this index.html inside here? Because that's what we need the front end to be showing. How do you think? Okay, well, say the first part though.
You request public/dist/public to get there on your server page.
Okay. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to use the express.static. Remember how we were routing our static files to a certain place, like we had a static folder? So basically these are going to be this is going to comprise most of our static stuff in here. Is this, this HTML and also any of these JS files that are being generated for us. So in order to do that, let's go back to our server, and we already have reference to Express, right? Let's say app.use, and then we want to do express.static, and again I'm going to do my dir name, so that's where we are right now, and we're going to tack on to that the public folder, and then we go into dist, which is the files that are being distributed, and then inside public again. Okay, and what this should ensure is that when we hit our root route, when we just go to localhost 3000, we're actually seeing an Angular app, not nothing, because we didn't really have a route for that, right? So let's go in here, hit this again, and there we go. We have an Angular app. So, was there a question there? No?
Actually, I have a question about the express.static. Because I was doing it this way as well, but then I noticed everyone else was using path.join. Like, does it matter if you're using the path? Like, it was working without it, and you're using it without it. Is there a reason that they tell you to require path and use it?
It's not critical, but you can do it. Yeah, path.join will essentially accomplish the same thing. Because here, the important thing is that you're referencing the double underscore dir name. If we don't know for sure what directory we're in, then we could have a problem with our pathing. But as long as we start from that point and then we add on, everything else. Like I could easily change this to path.join and it would still do the same thing. So as long as you're kind of aware of what you're doing, I think that's the most important thing. It's not so much, sometimes it's not so much the how. It's, okay, do I know how to get to that point where I'm actually, as long as it's routing to the correct place and you're pulling up your Angular app. Right? So what do we need to do now that we have this Angular app going? Let's take a quick look at what is inside the Angular app. So if I just fold up that dist folder, we can look inside the source. And then inside app, we've got this main component here. Okay, and there are some different pieces to the component. So I've got the CSS, which is just the styling for the component, which is this. There's nothing in there yet. And then I've got an HTML file here, app.component.html, and this is just the actual content that we're seeing on our screens right now. So that's the main app that they give you when you set up an Angular app. Okay, and then the app.component.ts, notice that that extension there. What does .ts mean? Yes, that it is a TypeScript file. And in here, you can see we're bringing in component from Angular core, and then we've got app-root. This is the actual selector name for the component itself. So if we go to our to the HTML file, let me go back to that real quick. So inside here, notice here that we're bringing in that root component. Okay, that's that selector that you guys are seeing in there inside the app component. So the thing that we want to do with our app, oh shoot, my battery is kind of dying. The thing that we want to do with our app is just simply grab all of our tasks and console log them. That's the only thing that we're going to do today, nothing earth-shattering here. But in order for us to do that, we've got to create what's called a service. And what the service is going to do is it's going to allow components, individual components, to connect to our backend and get data or change data, that sort of thing. Okay? So let's go back into our public folder, and I'm going to generate a service. So let's go ng generate service, and we're just going to call this service HTTP, all right, because it's going to do some HTTP requests for us. Okay, so you see it generated those for us, and oops, get out of that. Okay, so inside of our app, we've got this HTTP service in here, and then what we need to do, because we have to register all of our services, is we have to go inside this app.module and bring in the service that we're going to register for our application. So let's import HTTP service from, where is that? It's at the same level that we're at right now. So I can just go HTTP service right there. And then we want to add this to our providers that we're giving to the app. So we're going to give it the HTTP service. And then in order to use that, we also have to bring in a module from Angular, and it's called the HTTP client module. That will enable us to actually make these HTTP calls. So we'll say HTTP client module from Angular core, and it should be in HTTP or not. I'm sorry, that should be in common. Okay. So we're going to bring in the HTTP client module, and then we need to include that in our imports declarations here. Client module. Okay. So now really the only two things we need to do are slightly flesh out our service itself so that we can go get our tasks. And then inside of our app component, we're going to just simply log those tasks. That's it for now. So let's go to our service that we created. Where did it go? Just go right here. Okay, and the thing that we want to bring in is the HTTP client. And that's going to be in Angular common HTTP. Okay, and then in order to give us access to this HTTP client, we have to inject it. So Angular has this thing called Dependency Injection, which means that we're going to give it access to something from the outside. So we're going to say private, and then we'll say underscore HTTP, and it's going to be of type HTTP client. Yes, it is. Hey, Roger, would you grab in my charger? My charger is right up by where we were.
Oh,
At the front, yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So here we've injected our HTTP service, or actually the HTTP client, into our service so that we can use it to go and retrieve our tasks that we want. So let's just create a method in order to do that, and we'll say get tasks. Is get tasks going to take anything in? Do I need any arguments for that? Do I need any arguments for get tasks? No, right? Because I just want to get all of them. All right, so let's do that. And then what we need to grab a reference to is this HTTP client that I've injected into the service. So I'm going to say this, which is this particular instance of the service, and then underscore HTTP. Oops. And then we're going to do a GET request. And then what I need to pass to it, as you can see here, is just the URL as a string that I want to go to. So I'm trying to go to API/tasks. Okay. And then do you guys know what this is going to return? The ones who've gotten to Angular? Where'd Steve go? I know he knows. He escaped. Okay, so what this is going to return is something called an observable. Yeah. And what we can do, since it's something, it's called an observable, it's something that we can subscribe to. Meaning that when that thing comes back from the API, we can subscribe to it and do something with whatever came back. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to subscribe to it, and then we'll say the data. I'm just going to console log, got tasks, because we're excited about that. And then we're going to console log the actual data that we got. Okay? So all this thing does is we're going to go retrieve our tasks, and then we're going to subscribe to what that should be giving us back, and then we're just going to console log that we got it back. That's all we're trying to accomplish today. So in order to actually use this service, where do you think I need to import it and use it? Any guesses? You're close, in the app component. So I need to actually import it into a component so that it's going to run, so I can get my tasks, right? So let's go back to the app component here. Okay. And then inside, what I need to do is bring in this HTTP service that I just created. So we'll say import HTTP service from, and then where it is, it's at the same level that we're at. So we got HTTP service right there. And then inside the constructor, I'm going to inject an instance of this service. Okay, so I can say private HTTP is the HTTP service. And then when I construct this component, the other thing that I want to do is simply run my get tasks method to get all of those tasks. All right. So let's just do this HTTP, and then we'll get tasks. Okay. So when that runs, according to our service, all we're going to do is we're just going to subscribe to the data that's going to come back, and then we're just going to console log it. All right, so let's open up our console here. Get rid of this guy. All right. Okay, so we got our tasks. And then if I open up here, you'll see these are the tasks that we were expecting, right? We've got our eat lunch task and then our learn mean task. So that's all we're doing for today. Does anybody have any questions about it? We covered a ton of ground in this. Elijah?
There's one more aspect to the assignment, which is the part that I'm stuck on.
Okay.
Well, not the post, although I think that's the next assignment.
Yeah, I think that does.
But there's how to do the other get. So like if you provided it with one of the IDs, how to for some reason everything I do just keeps showing this first one. No matter what I do.
Well, yeah, and this is something that came up. I was talking to Steve about because I think the way they worded the assignment was a little. Basically, they're saying use all of your methods when you first load the component, but keep in mind that we don't yet have all of the IDs from our tasks just yet.
Right.
So really, the only way that you can start getting tasks by individual IDs if you've already obtained all tasks.
I just I copied and pasted. I was trying to just.
And then you hard code something.
And even still, what my problem was, even when I tried to add that method into the service and all of that, no matter what I did, every time it returned all the tasks, and I couldn't tell what was going wrong. Like it wouldn't hit the method that would find just the one. Okay. But we can look that out there.
Yeah, we'll look at it individually, and then if it seems like something that maybe a lot of people are having some issues with, I'll address it maybe in tomorrow's demo. Okay. Anything else? I know it was a lot, and if you guys need to look back at the video, it will be available. So how's that?
And a lot of it is walkthrough on the platform as well.
Exactly, right. There's that. Totally.